Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Sens Nation podcast. My name is Steve Warren, right here by the Senator Hot Stove.
Oh, yeah.
Huh? How about that? Along with Greg Kennedy, who's got his usual, I don't know what his background is at the moment. I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
His rotating background. Greg, how are you?
I'm good, Steve. Thanks for asking. I'm really glad we talked about the background the other day, and I said no, it's fine with the fireplace there, but the problem is people are going to think that that's a fake background. That's actually your little office / den / man cave on the top floor of your regal colonial home, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of people have said that, and we do some green screen, as you mentioned. But you know what? That's fun, just for fun. Sorry for you audio only listeners. I'm going to go and prove that the Senator Hot Stove is actually real. Oh. Here we go. Come back here. Rolling it in. There it is. Open it up. Now, another thing I've done there is displayed everybody that I could probably stand to lose 20 pounds. But other than that,
well,
now you know it's real.
I'm glad you did it because I'm in my boxers.
Right. But you have nothing real to show you behind you at the moment. So
some people might argue I have nothing real to show in front of me either.
Well, there you go. We've taken you inside baseball there. Let us get on to things, though. There's lots to talk about. And a really impressive 5-4 victory in overtime for the Ottawa Senators happening on Thursday night at the CTC. I thought that was a real tidy win. You know, and it was a funny one. It was like the tale of two games because it sure looked like, man, if you had bet the under, you were in great shape. It was 0-0 into the second period, and the Sens have been playing a lot of those types of games, 1-0, 2-1 type games. And then it turned into fire wagon hockey as it tends to every once in a while for this team. Sens blow a 4-2 lead in the third period. There was craziness all over the place. They end up going to overtime and winning it 5-4. But the power play, the penalty kill, that was all pretty high event hockey, wasn't it?
Yeah, they did not score a 5-on-5 goal, Steve. Right? The power play, the two shorties, the penalty shot, the 3-on-3 overtime goal. I come away from the game. Yeah, you could nitpick and say, well, a 3-1 lead in the third period, 4-2 lead in the third period. You should probably win that game handily. But that's the Washington Capitals, and they're in first place for a reason. And a couple power play goals, and boom, a seeing eye shot from Ovechkin and a power play goal, and bang, you're in trouble. But all in all, to me, it shows it's not really resiliency. It's just an ability to stick with the game plan. In past years, there are times when the Senators would just kind of make a stupid mistake in the middle of a game when it was 0-0 or 1-1, or, they're in the game, and then all of a sudden somebody go off page, they'd allow a goal, and then it would take them like 2 minutes or 3 minutes to get their act back together again and give up a couple more. It's just that this team now understands the game plan, understands what's expected of them, and they execute it, and they don't go off the page. And that's playoff hockey. That's the way a playoff hockey team plays, and that's the way you're going to play when you're in the playoffs. Get with the game plan and stick with it.
And these are things that I'm sure that DJ Smith told them in the past, but the wins didn't come, and that was partly manpower related. And so the young guys just get frustrated again and again. It was a cyclical pattern. And now they're getting rewarded. Now they've built a better roster with more balance. A lot of the same core is still there, but that same core now feels a confidence that they didn't have before because they are getting W's. They are getting a paycheck for doing the hard work and doing the defensive things. And so the longer it goes on, and now they're in another 3-game win streak, the more they realize, okay, they're putting 2 and 2 together, and they see what it's all about. And so I think it's, I would argue resiliency is part of it, but getting rewarded for your hard work is a big part of it as well. And they're becoming men on top of everything else, both mentally and physically. So yeah, it's coming very nicely. And it's nice. I think, most of all, I think Josh Norris, phenomenal hockey game. He was just flying there, and he looks like a guy that has rediscovered his mojo that was maybe lost a little bit. I think we've talked about it in past years on the show. I think that was a guy that was starting to play careful hockey because he was so worried about a recurrence of that shoulder injury. That now looks, to me at least, to be behind him.
Yeah, he was the best player on the ice, I thought, Steve. I was surprised that he wasn't first star. I mean, that's a whole other discussion. But he was the best player on the ice. He was flying, as you said. Shifted down to second power play unit, but that doesn't matter. He's still playing his game, doing his things. And on the PK, face-offs, he was the best player on the ice. And it's maybe a part of him is like, hey, you're not trading me for Elias Pettersson. I'm staying right here. I'm worthy of being here, and I'm worth my contract, and you're not trading me.
Yeah.
So maybe a little chip on his shoulder might have had a factor in it.
Who's faster, do you think? Is it Josh Norris or is it Tim Stützle?
It's a different kind of speed, right? Like Stützle's much more fluid. He's got a longer stride. Norris is shorter legs, so his stride's not as long. But when he gets going, Stützle's probably faster, I think. I mean, well, I guess we'll see in the next week or so, won't we? The skills competition's coming up. I think it's Stützle. What do you think?
I'd throw Jake Sanderson in there as well. He's in the discussion for fastest skater. Those would be my 3 picks at the moment. But man, watching Norris, it was almost like he just found another gear in that Washington game. And what a team to do it against. You can see that there's a reason the Capitals are the first place team. They didn't quit in that game and got back in it and forced overtime. But it's not, and it wasn't just Norris. It was Norris and Pinto. Like they were, I think 1A and 1B if you're looking at stars. They gave it to Shabbat, but it's his birthday. I get that, and I know he got the game-winning goal, but I didn't think he was even in the discussion for Game Star. Not that I care about Game Stars one way or the other, but just for the sake of argument. But Pinto and Norris, we've spoken about Norris. I thought Pinto was equally as good, and on the PK, you talked about the performance of the special teams. The PK, what did they end up with? 2 shorthanded penalty shots, scoring on one of them. You had, just looking at the special teams overall, they scored 2 power play goals. It just was a really good night to see that happen. And but in terms of Pinto, winning goal, phenomenal work on the boards along with Josh Norris to help set up Shabbat wide open out in front. Those 2 guys may be guys you need to keep together, even though they're both technically centermen.
Yeah, and we've discussed, if you're going to trade anyone, who are you going to move? We've talked about Josh Norris with the contract. We talked about Shabbat with the contract. I think as the season's gone along, Steve, I don't want to move any of those guys. I don't want to move any of the top 6. I mean, maybe if it's the right deal, it might be a Batherson because his contract would be really appealing to somebody. But I'm not talking now. I'm talking like off season. I don't see them moving Norris. I don't see them moving anybody of the top guns, right? And Pinto is now come along. He's better now than he was probably at his peak last season. His stats might not be there, but his game is there. He's an all around, quote unquote, 200-foot guy and kills penalties, plays in a power play, face off guy. Same thing as Norris. And I think you need both of them. You're right.
They don't have Nick Cousins and won't for the next 6 to 8 weeks. He was injured in the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I believe it was Quillen for the Toronto Maple Leafs in his very first game. He's carrying the puck, and Cousins has got him lined up, but they go knee on knee, and Cousins suffers a knee injury, and you may have seen on social media him lying in the hospital bed. So it's a bad one. I was looking at the 6 to 8 week mark. If it goes 8 weeks, he's still got about 10 games in the regular season where he could still be part of things, but that was a bad one. And I wondered, did you think it was, because I'm sure all of Leaf Nation was going, dirty old Nick Cousins again.
Yeah.
To me, I thought it was unfortunate, but I thought it was an accident. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was an accident too. Just one of those things, he did have them lined up and they were both coming across the ice. I mean, if you wanted to, you could even make the argument that Quillen's knee was stuck out and his right knee was stuck out, but just one of those accidents. I feel sorry for Nick Cousins because I thought he'd really come along and found his game and found his place in this roster, in this lineup, and the minutes he was playing and effective minutes. And this happens to him. And he's a guy on an expiring contract. I think he's only here for this year, only signed through the end of this year. Like it's gonna be tough for the poor guy to try to make a case for a renewal, for a new contract for next year.
Yeah, and I think I've made that comparison before between Cousins and Ridley Gregg. Gregg got a goal in the game, so hopefully he's starting to heat up a little bit in the offensive department. But there's a guy that you've just extended Ridley Gregg on potential, but in the here and now, they're very similar players, and that's a guy, like you mentioned, his contract's coming to an end at the end of this year. But he's only making $700, like basically league maybe $800. I'm not sure exactly, but not making a ton of money. And so you can still here in 2025 go out and get that type of player. And so that's why Ridley Gregg's got to get his offense going for that to not be a bit of an overpayment. But the future will only determine that. And what was the other thing I wanted to say about the particular hits? Oh yeah, so Jay Rosehill, former Leaf Tough guy. He's on a podcast now. I forget the name of it. And he says a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily agree with, but he had a really good breakdown, I thought, from an NHL player's perspective on those. If you watch Quillen with the puck, you can very clearly see that there's a bit of a shimmy with his upper body only to avoid the upper body collision. To me, it looked that the Cousins was coming in shoulder on shoulder. Quillen instinctively wants to avoid getting smoked, so he moves his upper body, but his legs are splayed out. And so while his upper body moves a little bit to the right, it's like Olay, his legs are still in Cousins' lane. And to me, just that fact combined with the body reaction of Cousins, who almost does a full, cartwheel, and the injury as well, I don't think he had any idea that lower body collision was coming, even though everybody on social media was saying, yeah, that rat Cousins being Cousins. So I didn't think that was, I thought Jay Rosehill explained it very well. Make that your internet homework on his podcast this week.
Ready for the big game? Your home should be too. With Celebrate Lights, you can show your team spirit and light up every victory. Sync your lights to your team's colors and let the whole neighborhood know when they score. Match your team's colors, celebrate every win, and take the excitement to the next level. Celebrate permanent holiday lighting, the easiest way to set the stage for unforgettable moments.
This is Ryan. Ryan would love to start his own podcast as a fun way to create content for all his platforms, to better connect with his customers and build a new audience. But Ryan isn't great with technology, and he has a lot of questions. What's the easiest way to record a high-quality podcast? Does he need to travel to a studio? What equipment will he need? How does he get his podcast online? What if he has an out-of-town guest? Capital Podcast had all of Ryan's answers. After a free consultation, we took care of everything for him. All Ryan had to worry about was jumping on the mic and starring in his own show. He's recording this week's episode right from his office. His expert guest this week is one of his customers who's in a Chicago hotel room. And Capital Podcast is online with them, making sure the final product is perfect. Easy, convenient, professional. Contact us today and star in your own show with capitalpodcast.ca.
Michael Andlauer. He, of course, took grief, and we talked about this in the last episode, for the Quebec City affair. Pretty harmless to play a couple of games in the preseason in Quebec City for the Ottawa Senators. But then he made a mention of maybe regular season games at some point. Didn't say how many exactly, just said it was a possibility. That's the vision, I think, is what he said when somebody directly asked him about regular season games someday. And of course, the big thing, I think, was Spartacat had Quebec Nordique's colors on, half of a Nordique's jersey spliced with a Sens jersey. And I thought, social media got its pound of flesh. I thought Cyril Leader, the team CEO and president, I thought he explained it away pretty well and took accountability. But it still was at a point where the owner of the Ottawa Senators felt like he had to go and get a number of the members of the media and further explain it. I thought to myself that now I don't feel like, I didn't love it, the whole Nordique on Spartacat thing, but I wasn't losing any sleep over it. I would have said, yeah, maybe that's not your best PR move ever, but I didn't think it rose to the level of the owner of the Ottawa Senators needing to officially address it with the media. What did you think?
Well, I think it's because it really didn't die down with Cyril's explanation or apology, or, and Cyril basically said, I own that. Well, so then Michael Andlauer came out and said the same thing. I think I think it's a sign of a man who genuinely cares about the fans of the Ottawa Senators, and he felt, I got to step up and say something here, because it was not exactly dead. It didn't go away. It lingered for another day or two, and I think that's what it was. He genuinely cares about this fan base. I'm concerned about playing regular season games in Quebec City, especially if I'm a season ticket holder. But other than that, he felt he had to say something, and he came forward and said it.
Yeah, I guess I don't. I'm just surprised it had to go that far. I didn't think it was such a sin. I feel like, as I mentioned in the last episode, this is a case of past trauma with the owner then now bleeding onto the current ownership, and that's unfortunate. To me, Michael Andlauer has, done nothing that should remove the benefit of the doubt for the guy, and that's what he talked about. It's just, trust me on this. Please give me the benefit of the doubt on this, because I have nothing but the best interest of Sens fans. He talked about the fact that he's making his permanent home here. He's putting an addition on his home, and I just feel like it was a misstep. But if it really rose to the level of needing to address by the owner, I just feel like that's giving him zero benefit of the doubt. Like, that's treating him almost like Eugene Melnyk. Melnyk would need to do that, and he probably would secure friend of the show, Mark Borowiecki, to interview him on it to talk about the Nordique gate. But no, to me, if you're right and he did still need to address it, then I think that the fans, in fact, who were still complaining about it at that stage, even after Cyril Leader had taken accountability for it, I think the fans that were still upset at that stage need to take a step back and say, does Andlauer deserve that level of grief for that level of sin? To me, it didn't rise to that. That's all.
Yeah, no, I see your point. And do you think Eugene would actually have ever said anything, or he would have just gone on with Bob McCowan and talked about it? Like, I don't know that Eugene would have addressed it with the local media.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but how do you feel about this idea of regular season games being played in Quebec City? Like, I get it. Quebec City wants to get an NHL team, and they'll gladly take this because they can show the NHL that we can draw fans. Well, give them a Tuesday night 7:00 game against Columbus. If you're going to give the Quebec City an Ottawa Senator home game, do that. Don't give them a Hab game, because that affects the revenue of the Senators here, because they would draw the fans and make more money having a game here in Ottawa against the Habs. Don't give Quebec City a Hab game against the Sens, because even then, half the place would probably still be Hab fans. Give them a Tuesday night, 7:00 in the middle of February against Columbus, and then let's see them pack the house.
Well, maybe that's the theory, though. They're going from the perspective of the Habs. They're the bad side. They're the black hat in the Battle of Quebec. So maybe that represents the best opportunity to win over Sens fans. Get them watching, basically anybody but the Canadians, ABC, in a lot of cases in Quebec City. And if that's the Sens, maybe that helps expedite conversion to fandom. I don't know. But I don't love it in general. I don't love it when it's over in Europe or Sweden or whatever. Yeah. Sweden's in Europe, but Sweden, Germany, wherever you are, I don't like NHL regular season games being played over there either, but maybe I'd like it, if I was an NHL owner. And preseason, let's be honest, I know Cyril Leader talked a little bit about it. It's not going to make that much difference financially from, these two games being played in Ottawa or Quebec City. I have a hard time believing that Ottawa, for the New Jersey Devils, for example, is going to put up a big number in the preseason to come out and watch that game. I think you're probably looking at 5,000-6,000 short of a sellout. Whereas in Quebec City, I feel like Sens Devils could very well sell out at the Videotron Center.
No, I agree. No matter what game is played there, no matter who Ottawa plays, no matter what lineup Ottawa has, I believe the Senators that will sell that out. No, sorry, I shouldn't say the Senators will sell it out. The people of Quebec City will buy all the tickets. It will have nothing to do with who's playing. It's NHL hockey. It's coming back to Quebec. We're going, whole families. It'll be a big deal. It'll sell out no matter who's playing. I just don't think it's right to put regular season games in there. I'm not a fan of that idea at all.
Yeah, I feel I feel bad for Michael Andlauer at the end of the day. I know there are lots of people who are critical, but I think it's part of being sensitive because of the past. It's just unfortunate because if it was a clean slate and this was an expansion team, Michael Andlauer has really done nothing but good things since he arrived as owner of the team. He's had a couple of missteps, but everybody has missteps. I wasn't fond of the. He referenced something along the lines of what was the somebody was getting it. Oh, somebody was being criticized. Might have been, was it Hamannik? I don't know exactly, but it was something. And then Andlauer basically sloughed it off by saying, what was it, 15 fans up in section 306, something like that. Yeah, but I don't recall exactly what the issue is at this stage. So that didn't go particularly well, but again, a small thing. And this was also, I think, a small thing. Everything else, a guy steps up. He's got deep pockets. Seems like a really nice, personable guy that's in it for the right reasons. Yeah, he wants to make money like everybody else in the NHL, but he seems to have some level of empathy for his fan base and customers. And so, it felt like, I guess I felt badly that Michael Andlauer, just as a close on this subject, that Michael Andlauer had to go to this level to again address it and sort of again to fall on his sword and all that. But that's how it is right now with the fan base because of what the previous owner did to their psyche when you get down to it. So moving on to the cap. Next 3 years, according to Elliot Friedman, the cap is going up. I think it's like $9 million each of the next 3 years. It was a big hike this year. It went up something close to $7 million, but now it's going up $9 million each of the next 3 years. And that is hey, not to steal your line, but before we came on, imagine what Eugene Melnick's reaction to that would be, because that's $25 million roughly worth of salary cap hikes in the last 4 years total alone.
U.S. dollars too, right? Let's not forget your revenues in Canadian dollars, your expenses are in American. I just think that the whole idea of the cap, when it came in, was this idea of parity, want teams to be on an equal footing. I'm thinking by the time it gets to $113 million in 4 years, you're going to be right back to what you were pre-cap. The Rangers will be spending to the cap. The Leafs will be spending the cap. They're the halves. They've got all the money, and there'll be have-nots again in this league. And I just hope Ottawa's not one of them. But there will be teams in this league that'll be at the bare minimum with internal budgets, the internal budget for whatever reason, because we're rebuilding or because, look, hey, I just can't afford that. My revenues cannot justify $113 million in salary. So I think you may find out that the NHL is going to go right back to where they were pre-cap days with haves and have-nots.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting. This spike is happening at a time when the NHL broadcast deal is about to expire. Rogers will give up the rights, I think, in 2026. And because I think even if all things were equal, because Rogers really, really overspent on what was it, $5 billion for a 12-year contract. And I think throughout most of it, they were losing money. There's that. I think they might, with that in mind, have gotten out of the game anyway. But I really think that Amazon is about to step up and crush the Rogers and the Bells of the world. And whatever number the NHL needs, Jeff Bezos is just going to go ahead and fill out that blank check. And I think that's part of why we're seeing the salary cap skyrocket the way it has here, because the NHL may have some expectations about what that next deal is going to be with Amazon potentially entering the fray.
I just got to believe, though, that the man's not an idiot. Jeff Bezos, that is. I'm thinking, if you look at the Rogers deal and you think how much they spent and did they make any money, The answer is no. So I just wonder, how high are you willing to go to get the NHL rights? You know, in a case of Amazon, they're going to have to go a little higher than you'd think anyway, because they're Amazon and not a network or a sports network or whatever. But I just think that he might be a little too smart to overpay the way that Rogers did. And if that's the case, then, you know, there's not a lot of revenue there from that in comparison to what you're at right now.
Right. Yeah, it's such a valuable property, though, if sold right. You know, if Amazon's out there and adding it, bundling it up with, you know, Amazon Prime and all that stuff, that, you know, there's probably ways they can make more money with it than a Rogers or a Bell. But, you know, it's not like Rogers or Bell don't have their subsidiary products as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just have a hard time believing the NHL would really spike like this unless it knew some serious revenue was about to start rolling in. And I feel like there's an understanding that, you know, Amazon's coming in and they're going to start here as this auction number begins. But we'll see. I you know, leaving the cap out of it, I do think Amazon is going to be the next carrier, which will be kind of a double-edged sword, because everybody I talk to really likes the Amazon coverage, but at the same time, that takes out of the mix changing channels while you're watching the game, which a lot of fans love to do.
Right. And the PVR. Like, yeah, I can watch it later, but I can't watch it. Can I watch it while it's on and be behind? I honestly don't know. You know what I mean? Like I can put the game on my PVR. Yeah. The game might start at 7 and I can start watching it at 8 from the beginning. Can I do that on Prime? I honestly don't know. I haven't tried yet. I think Monday night's game against Nashville is a Prime game, right? So we'll see. I'll check it out, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I don't have that set up either, so I don't know what the answer is either. I'm sure one of the good listeners will be able to tell us. SensNationHockey@outlook.com. And since I've thrown out that email address, any feedback you have on the show, anything you'd like to see us improve on, anything you'd like to see us talk about here on the program, we are all ears. We love chatting and interacting with you guys. The Four Nations is just 5 games away now. Sens are going to cram in a bunch of games here in the next week, and 5 games remain, and Linus Ullmark is still not back in the lineup. He's very close. There was some talk that he might come back on Thursday and be a backup. What say you about... Now, you know what? Now that I mentioned it, he wasn't backing up last night, was he?
No, he did not. There was talk that he might, but he did not.
Yeah.
So now the talk is,
I never got a resume.
Yeah, is he going to play Saturday? That's the talk now. Is he going to be in goal Saturday night? I can't help thinking, like, he better play. If he's going to play in the Four Nations, he better get 3 or 4 games in, or at least 2 or 3 before the Four Nations. Make sure he's okay, because the worst thing you want is him, you know, not having played a game since whatever it was back in December, and step into the Four Nations. And they're without Markstrom, so they kind of need him. He's going to be the number 1 goalie, I would think now. I don't know. Would you want him to play? I don't know that ownership has the right to stop him or not. I'm not even sure exactly what the rules are, whether you can say no to a player playing. I think maybe if he's on IR, you can. So I don't know. I don't think I want him playing in that Four Nations unless he's played at least 2 or 3 of these next 5 games.
Yeah, and honestly, I can make an argument for just shutting him down just for the sake of shutting him down between now. You know, we're still, I don't know, it's still like 2 weeks away. So we're February 13th, I think, is the first game, if memory serves. And it's so frequently it is not. So there's 13 days there. And then the tournament itself is a couple of weeks long. So I'm like, well, why not just give him the whole time off? You know, and I say that not to be a jerk. I say that because I want the guy to be healthy, not just for the rest of this season, but long term. And again, we know how unpredictable and quirky back problems can be. And so if this guy's been dealing with it, and it may be that he's had this back problem on and off all season, I think he's ready to come back, but he's had a recurrence of injury. And so I don't want him to come back. I mean, I might say, you know what, we're going to shut you down, and then you can buffer up against the Four Nations Challenge or NHL or whatever, Four Nations Face-Off. And then you get basically another full month off to get that back in the best shape possible. Give yourself every opportunity to not only be healthy down the stretch, but to not have some sort of recurring back injury that troubles you for the rest of your NHL career.
I don't know. I'm thinking there's something to be said for if he's healthy enough to play, to go there and play and work the bugs out. Like if he comes back cold and hasn't played in however long it ends up being, and he comes back and plays, maybe his first couple games are stinkers. Do you want those stinkers to be playing for the Senators, or do you want them to be playing in the Four Nations? Like I'm thinking, there's something to be said for that. There's a positive too. If he gets a couple games in beforehand and then goes and plays the tournament, when he comes back, he's like fired up and ready to go for the last stretch drive after that.
Yep. No, there's many ways to kick a can. I was going to say the cat reference. The cat reference is starting to get kind of violent sounding, so I'm going to stay away from that. But there's many ways to go at it, and that's probably how I would handle it. Though I just say, you know what, you've been on the sideline off and on too many times. That's just how I'd handle it. But anyway, we wish him well. Get back soon, and hopefully he'll be as good as the goaltending they've been getting. That Forsberg came apart a little bit against the Washington Capitals. I don't know that anything was dramatically his fault per se, but in general, you got everything you possibly could out of your second and third string goalies to the point where you don't need to rush Linus Ullmark back, which is part of my thinking as well when I look at things, the back injury, the recurrence of injuries, the fact that the guys behind you are doing absolutely as well as you can expect any goaltender to do, so no real hurry. But that's it for the Four Nations talk. Last thing, and a difficult one for sure, to learn this week that former TSN 1200 announcer Shawn Simpson passed away at the age of 56. Very sad news to hear that. When a friend of mine texted me about it, are you hearing about this? I'm like, what? Made some calls and found out that Shawn had passed away, and it was very difficult to hear about it, and so sad. Because the guy had the joie de vivre. He was one of those guys that always had the big smile. He had the infectious laugh. And I'm sure, you're roughly the same age as Simmer and me as well. The pop culture references, we're on the same page, and loving hockey and loving talking about hockey and loving a good laugh. So he was one of those guys that he got along well, good to have a beer with. Always, he talked about this in his radio career in the later days, that he struggled with mental health, and I didn't know how serious that went. And getting together with some people the other night, got a real tangible sense of how deeply that did affect him, particularly after his TSN 1200 days. And so, a very sad story indeed to hear that, and a tip of the cap and the sky point to Shawn Simpson on his passing this week. Any thoughts on that, Greg?
I think you've summed it up, Steve. I just light up a room, right? That's my main. Simmer could walk in a room and you'd never know that there were any problems. You'd never know that he was fighting demons, as the expression goes. The man could light up a room and was so engaging, and, how are you? How you doing? How's this? How's that? Caring so much about those around him. He'll be missed. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it than he will be missed.
Seriously will be missed by those of us in the sports media and those who enjoyed listening to him. So, condolences to his family and friends.